Days Gone is another one of those games that's had its reputation ruined by a handful of well-established review companies and then seen its reputation rebuilt by the gamers themselves, taking to Metacritic to voice their beliefs and their opinions of the scores that these supposed experts gave the game.
They know nothing. They know nothing. Right. We know more than they do.
Now, Days Gone isn't without its flaws, but the 5s and 6s that it got across the board was a unified, shambolic collection of misguided opinions, and after playing the game myself on the PS4 when it released before I even started this channel, it genuinely shocked me to see how different the opinions of others can differ from mine. That's a good thing really, but thankfully I'm not alone in thinking Days Gone deserved much higher praise than it originally got. Now technically these aren't actually zombies, they're called freakers, and rarely has there been an interesting history in any zombie apocalyptic medium behind how the flesh-eating humanoids came to be.
Oh, boring. You are boring me to death, and I am already dead. You're boring me back to death.
Without spoiling anything too much, Days Gone offers that similar generic backstory to their existence, but developers Bend Studios did an amazing job of propping up this unoriginal apocalyptic narrative with some hugely impressive character design and vocal performances. The writing wasn't always the greatest, but the performances breathed life into the script, namely the two best biker buddies, Boozer and the playable protagonist Deacon St. John. There's some inspired performances from lesser roles in the game, but these two in particular hit the right notes throughout, even during the scenes when I've got to crunk up the volume because Deacon has decided to mumble his words for dramatic effect.
Deacon St. John.
Look, Deacon St. John.
Similar to The Walking Dead's approach and evolution of the series, Days Gone places a strong emphasis on how humans would get along, or rather not get along, during a zombie apocalypse. As the former outlaw Deacon St. John ventures across Oregon, his story takes him through various friendly camps that all have leaders with varying and clashing ideologies on how to survive this new world. They all make a good case on how a survivor's camp should be upheld, and as a result, choices are presented to the player that have zero impact on the main plotline, but instead, those choices fast-track Deacon's availability to different gear and upgrades. The choices are most commonly found through random events like saving somebody from a certain predicament, and choosing which camp to send them to will earn respect from that camp. Other random events will present themselves too, like sniper ambushes, tripwire ambushes, and even snares that will capture Deacon, landing him in an enemy's prison. But not to worry, these guys are straight out of the James Bond villain textbook, taking all of my weapons and kindly leaving them in a box just outside my door. And oh look, they've even left me with a knife so I can pick the lock too.
I'm going to leave them alone and not actually witness them dying. I'm just going to assume it all went to plan. What?
The respect from each camp comes in the form of in-game currency camp credits, which can be spent on new weapons, ammo, bike maintenance, and further upgrades. There's other ways to earn camp credits off these survivor camps than simply saving random folk though. Completing a camp's side missions, providing the camp with meat and animal skins that you can hunt down while out in the wild, and even collecting freaker bounties by turning in freaker ears. To be honest, I've not got a clue what these people are doing with freaker ears, cooking them in a pot, decorating their homes, or wiping their asses with them, but I'm not sure why Deacon is only cashing in one ear per kill. I'd definitely be jibbing the camps by cutting both ears off for double respect and camp credits if that was me, but hey ho. Speaking of respect though, I would love to see a sequel to Days Gone, but any hopes of this happening seem to have been shattered thanks to the Days Gone creative director John Garvin voicing his frustrations at the game's sales figures and coming out with the statement, "If you love a game, you should buy it at full fucking price." Comments that were obviously going to be rejected by gamers, because who hasn't bought a game on sale first of all, and secondly, these comments just simply aren't helpful to anyone. But hey ho, Sony threw him right in the bin.
But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
But back to the game though, not all the camps found around Oregon are friendly ones, with some highly disturbing factions having formed around the area. Now you've got the anarchists, the marauders and the rippers, a cultist group that have captured and burnt Boozer's arm to a crisp during the intro of the game, and these groups all have differing backstories to them and all have camps dotted around the map for Deacon to find and wipe out. The combat is a little rough during the early sections of the game, and I grew to like the fact that it felt loose at first but tightened up as things progressed. You can of course go into fights stealthily, which is definitely the weakest side of the combat mechanics, with the overly forgiving enemy AI, some enemy traps to avoid which are usually pretty well hidden, and then the usual bushes to hide in and backstabbings to utilise. Nothing too special about the melee combat either. If anything, it's a little OP if you can master the dodge timing, and even though each weapon degrades with use, it's pretty easy to keep your melee weapon at full health by looting scrap and repairing them before they wear down completely. You can even find blueprints around Oregon to unlock the ability to craft your own DIY melee weapons, and these are usually limited to a couple of ingredients to make, but nothing quite as extravagant as Dead Rising's weaponry. The gunplay is where I think a lot of people might be divided, with a reticle that's as large as Mia Khalifa's arsehole eventually tightening, or rather shrinking, into a smaller, more precise hole as you steady your aim. With no enemy levels, this not only frees you up to explore any area and take on any enemy that you can find, but it also makes the skills you upgrade feel way more noticeable. With the three categories of survival, melee and ranged, they all offered game-changing features, but I felt like the ranged really made the biggest improvements to Deacon and how he feels to control. The improved accuracy and recoil skills make such a tangible difference to the level of enjoyment I got from firing any weapon, taking Deacon from the feel of an amateur freaker slayer to a one-man freaker wrecking ball, cutting his way through the hordes like a knife through butter. The focus ability is a slow motion ability basically, and this is one of those abilities that's often thrown into games to mask the subpar gunplay mechanics, but making it easier for the player to hit their target. Most of the best shooter mechanics out there tend not to have slow motion as an option, but in Days Gone, particularly at first, it's an extremely limited ability, only really allowing you to kill one or two at best when focus is activated. When not activated, and having gotten my eye in myself against the differing enemy types and their animations, the gunplay still felt tight and responsive, which is nice. Alongside skill upgrades, Deacon can upgrade his three base attributes of health, stamina and focus ability by finding these injectors left behind by the mysterious corporation Nero. I always prioritise health over stamina in most games, but in Days Gone it places such an importance on your stamina. The hordes feel like such a grueling and intense experience that it gives you no time to breathe if your stamina's not up to scratch, and that's even with a fully stocked inventory of all the best gear. I appreciated the middle ground of the weapon wheel too, while not as impossible to stop and change gear like say in a Dark Souls during the heat of the battle, but it's not as forgiving as a Fallout or Skyrim where you can pause the whole game pulling up your entire inventory at the press of a button. Going into slow motion is such a wise design choice for a game like this, albeit not exactly realistic for Deacon to fill his glass with petrol, stuff it with cloth and light it while full on sprinting away from a horde. It provides a much needed fluidity to the experience. That same sense of progression that's found within Deacon's personal skills can also be found in Deacon's bike too. It felt horribly weighty as it chugged along at an unsatisfactory speed during the early parts of the game, but as you invest into the bike over time, the improvements are glaringly obvious, unlocking new parts to add better horsepower, more traction, and the addition of a nitrous injector takes that satisfaction level through the roof. I found cornering fun right from the get-go though. There's a subtle delay to your input which might sound bad, but once you've realised the timing, it actually feels real as Deacon's animations kick in, drifting around each corner and feeling the weight of the bike underneath him. It feels great to drive. Now what doesn't feel great though is the infuriating stutter that seems to be accompanied with driving this bike. The game's smooth as hell on foot, but the game engine seems to struggle to keep up as you're flying through Oregon at times, and albeit not that regular occurrence, and I'm glad they've ironed out most of the bugs and performance issues that did hit Days Gone on release, it's frustrating that this issue's still not been addressed. The survival aspect of Days Gone is pretty minimal. As with any game really, going in blind on your first playthrough, you'll be punished by these mechanics harder than you would do on your second playthrough. That's an obvious statement. But I found playing on my third playthrough, my inventory was pretty much fully stocked at all times, and that's due to the fact that I'm an avid looter and now I know exactly where to look. An instinct ability where Deacon can ping an area to highlight any items obviously helps with this, and I'll pick that area clean. I made much better use of my inventory this time round though, and as a result I constantly found myself unable to pick up most things, which is frustrating, so I felt the looting economy on the whole needed a little more refining. It was ammunition and the car oil filters, which Deacon turns into makeshift degradable suppressors, were the two resources that I was in constant need of. On my most recent playthrough though, I just felt like I had an abundance of everything, which is likely down to my experience with the game, because I definitely remember more necessity being placed on scavenging on my first playthrough, searching for health ingredients, scrap to maintain my bike, and melee weapons, as well as ammunition and the other ingredients to craft the various throwables are essential. I also remember the pain of running out of fuel, almost creating this self-generated side quest to go and find a fuel canister leading to treks into the most dangerous areas. I never ran out of fuel during my most recent playthrough, again likely because I know where to look for more fuel and wanted to avoid the pain of searching for a canister, which depending on where you break down can lead to a very engaging or very boring aspect of the game. Just to reiterate my point from the beginning though, Days Gone was harshly treated on release, and that's even easier to say after so many of the bugs and performance issues have been ironed out since then. Except for the stuttering when driving, that did my head in. It's such a memorable story with some incredibly passionate performances from so many of the characters. I felt such a connection to Deacon and his past relationship with Sarah during the many playable flashbacks, providing the player with a much needed insight into Deacon's softer, more relatable side, contrasting the gritty and unforgiving person he's instinctually grown into as a means to survive. The progression system is so tangible with Deacon himself and his bike that, albeit the game felt a little drawn out, clocking in at around 50 to 60 hours with a fairly sluggish middle act, I still felt the urge to keep pushing through to the final act without any sense of it being a grind due to the upgrades feeling so rewarding. I felt that the combat mechanics weren't the best that I've ever played, but they more than hold their own against most blockbuster AAA third-person action games out there, and I still believe that the full package of what Days Gone offers was and still is a far better game than most of the early reviews suggest. The footage you've seen was played on a 3090 desktop at 4K and a 3070 laptop at 1440p, both performing stably above 60 FPS at pretty much maximum settings. The visuals don't quite hit the heights of other Sony titles like God of War or Death Stranding, but there's still some pretty breathtaking scenery to absorb in a part of the world I would love to visit someday, minus the half-dead guys mooching about of course. But for console players, the PS5 upgrade is free and boasts a dynamic 4K resolution at 60 FPS, which is a monstrous difference in how it felt compared to playing on PS4. A game that's been hard done by in my opinion, and it's a shame that there's no signs of any sequel, because I truly believe this had potential to go on becoming a long-lasting franchise. It doesn't exactly help its chances with the creative director's comments, but Days Gone still exists, and that's a game I'm more than happy with. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Does Days Gone have the legs to become a franchise, or were the initial reviews right with the 5s and 6s? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.